Okay, well now we have a very exciting panel that has everything to do with startups, which is what this is all about. I don't know how many of you might remember a company that was here several years ago called Alien Volt. Alien Volt was a company that started probably about 10 years ago here in Spain. And I remember the first time they came to South Summit, it was a little company trying to get attention. Well, they got somebody's attention. They got Daniel Green's attention, who's our moderator today. Daniel Green helped them eventually get to Silicon Valley. They raised about 100 million or something like that. Well, Alien Volt has been sold to AT&T for several hundred million. You see, those stories rarely come out, but there's so many stories like that. And Daniel Green, who's moderating today, is an expert at this. Fluent in Spanish. He's here probably 2 or 3 times a year, and he probably is responsible for taking more Spanish startups to Silicon Valley than anybody else. Now, the rest of our panel is quite interesting as well. You might know Spotahome. Well, we got the CEO of Spotahome, one of the big success stories here. We've got Oscar Miel, who's the head of Rakuten Capital. Rakuten is probably one of the most disruptive companies in Japan. And last but not least, we have Beatriz Gonzalez, the CEO or managing partner of SIA Ventures. Beatriz has been around for a long time. She is probably one of the most renowned, one of my favorite, I have to say, venture capitalists in this country. Spent many years at Telefonica, doing a great job, and then she decided to start a fund that has the name of a beach in the north. So you can imagine where she's from. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Daniel, Alejandro, Beatriz, and Oscar.
Thank you, Paris, for that great introduction. Super happy to be here. We have a lot to cover in a short amount of time, and so really honored to be up here with 3 wonderful individuals. Let's dive in. Alejandro, I'll start with you. As I've been here this week, everyone's talking about the Spotahome fundraising. You guys raised money with one of the top VCs in Silicon Valley, Kleiner Perkins, which I'm sure is on the minds of a lot of the entrepreneurs in the audience who are thinking about raising capital. So would love to hear from you that journey from kind of the initial meetings to actually closing on the round.
Okay, so thank you everyone for coming. It's great to be here again. So yeah, we raised a few months ago $40 million, led by Kleiner Perkins, and it all started actually 1 year ago. My co-founders Bruno, Brian, and I, we did like an offsite to Silicon Valley. One thing that we were thinking after summer is that we were spending too much time like at the office, like operating. So we started to see like our decision making, it was more narrowed instead of thinking more global, more ambitious. And then so we sat down and we were like, okay, let's get out of here and let's do an offsite. And instead of going to somewhere outside of Madrid, then we went to Silicon Valley, and we went there because we already had some investors there, some entrepreneurs, like for example, founder of Zendesk, some of the top executives at Instacart, Adobe. So then we went there, they introduced us some investors. And at the beginning we went there and we were thinking, okay, we are like a Spanish startup, nobody's going to be listening to us, and with everything that is going on here, right? And we started to sit down with these VCs and telling them our long-term vision, super ambitious, how we see the real estate industry in the future, and our plans, and then also our growth status. Then the reception was incredible. Like everyone was like, when are you guys gonna raise? And it was completely unexpected. It was the other thing that we were expecting. So then I told to Bruno and Brian, I said, guys, Series B is gonna be entirely from Silicon Valley, and then we are gonna get one of the top tier VCs here. And actually, it was undone before, like, by any other Spanish startup. It was like kind of nobody would believe that back then. So then, like 2 months after, I went back to San Francisco through a program that is called Black Box from Google for entrepreneurs. Went there a couple of weeks, and then I was looking in my inbox like San Francisco and all the VCs, and I found Kleiner Perkins among them. And then, I sat down, grabbed a coffee, and I met Mudragani, one of the partners, and then, we connected. And then we started to talk. And they were like, when are you guys going to raise? I said Q2. 2018, and they were like, no, you're going to raise in Q1. And I was like, why? And he said, we are going to block that, and I'm going to be in Madrid in 1 month. And then, he came over, and then we started to talk, and then, went back again to Silicon Valley. I remember calling Bea one day, and she was like, yeah, what are you doing? And I said, I'm taking a plane and going to San Francisco for 5 days, and I have some meetings there, and then everything accelerated, and then we got a term sheet pretty quickly, actually, yeah.
What was it that excited Kleiner Perkins and the other US VCs that you were talking to? What was it that really made them want to make the investment?
When, for example, at Kleiner, I went there at the office, and then I gave like high-level numbers, but then it was all about the long-term vision. And what I told them is how the real estate market is working today, and then how it's evolving, and then how really there is not like a global platform around in the world that any product and service related to real estate can be transacted online. Everything is pretty offline. And so I was just telling about the long-term vision. That's one thing. And then in this case, Mood, he was like helping me out with the vision. So we were like complementing each other in that long-term vision and thinking how customers are going to be behaving around real estate in the future. And we were always thinking about the entire planet. The same as first time when I talked with Bea. And it's not a European company, it's a global company. And we always were born with that idea in our mind. That it was one thing. And the second, it was, I went very clear with them, and I was like, okay, one of the limitations that we have today for a scale is kind of the team that we have now is quite junior. We made it until here, but then if we want to go to the next stage, I want to bring like the best people in the world, wherever they are, and I'm super committed to that, whatever it takes, and kind of upgrade the whole executive team. So I was super clear with them, and so I told them also our weaknesses today, and I think they liked that, and they were like, we can help you out with that, and I was like, and for me it was clear if that was the ultimate goal too, like bringing these kind of VCs as well, it was what we wanted to recruit. So yeah, I think those two things were crucial, yeah.
And one thing about your cap table that may not be widely known and is pretty innovative is you've actually raised money from a number of founders, both in the US and elsewhere. Can you talk a little bit about that strategy?
Yeah, so I'm obsessed about global network. I always tell Bea that the more people that they are interested in your success, the more chances you have to succeed, right? And the thing is that every time that I'm fortunate enough to meet incredible people, super smart people, and people that I like, and I know our shareholders will like, and the team will like, I always invite them to join. And I say, like we are doing this now. There is this opportunity of investing in the company. Would you join us so I can take a couple of coffees with you per year, right? So by that, we started to add a lot of entrepreneurs, yeah. But that comes because I made a mistake in 2015. And I know there are entrepreneurs here, but in one of the rounds, we didn't want to get too diluted. And we got, the lead investor was Passion Capital, and then we had a space of 250K extra. And then we had an offer for co-investing from some entrepreneurs, and we said no, because we didn't want to get diluted. And that was a huge mistake, I think. And after that, I was like, okay, I learned, and now I'm going to do the opposite. And now the cap table is quite, I always tell Bea, I met this guy, this amazing. We should include him here.
So we have this discussion because I'm always trying to, get him to focus, basically, because he's very expansive. I'm also a very expansive person, but every time, we do a round, these new people come into the round, and I'm always thinking, okay, we shouldn't have too many people, but then it's the ex-CEO of Uber, the CEO of Dropbox, the CEO of Booking, so you can't really tell him, don't bring this guy into the cap table, right? But at some point he has to stop.
Yeah.
So we have to just leave it there. And
it becomes pretty addictive, actually.
Exactly, so he just goes on a roll and brings all these people, but they're all usually, most of them, not usually, all of them are actually very senior CEOs that help him in the company and give him obviously very good advice.
Yeah, and it helps you to recruit actually as well.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes if the candidate can call them, had a chat with them, that helps a lot. Yeah, and I'm a firm believer. Very quickly, it's on being super active. So one of the latest individual investors, it was like a trip that I went, like I took a flight, 10 hours flight, just to be there one night to meet this person and came back.
That was 2 weeks ago.
Yes,
Miami, no?
that was Miami. Yeah.
Great. So Bea, you've been involved with the Spanish VC ecosystem for many, many years. What do you think is changed? What do you see ahead? What are you most excited about among Spanish startups?
Well, it hasn't been that long actually, because we started the fund in 2013, so it's been 5 years. But what we've seen in the last 5 years is that the ecosystem has changed completely. So before 2013, you had very few funds in Spain, very few companies that could raise rounds above 10 million euros. You had very small exits, so it was a very small ecosystem. After 2013, you have a lot of funds new to the ecosystem, I think 40 in the last 50 years. Some of them are small, but obviously growing, like us. We started off as a small fund and we've grown, obviously. And many companies raising bigger rounds. Obviously, you have bigger exits like Privalia, Alien Vault. So the whole ecosystem has changed because these companies can now think about the long term. They don't have to sell to the next American player that comes along because they have funding, they have support, and they can just think about the long term and think about an IPO, think about not even, I wouldn't say, I think that the definition would be what Alejandro always says, they don't have to think about the exit, they can just think about building their business. Otherwise, before it was a constant struggle to get funding, and you actually always had to be very wary of that, like have to be in contact with all the potential players that could buy you because at some point you run out of money and you have to sell your company. That's not the case anymore, so it's been a very huge change. But still, we're far behind the rest of the European countries, aside from Italy. We have 0.02% of VC money as a percentage of GDP, 5 times less than the UK, 10 times less than the US. So in that sense, there's a lot of room for growth and opportunity. And I would just add to end the sort of view of the ecosystem that the thing that has also changed significantly is the role that the international funds and international players like Rakuten, for example, play in our country, right? They're all here, they're investing, they're putting big tickets, and that has changed, obviously, the size of the market and the perception.
How do you guide your portfolio companies to think about the right time to raise international money? Sometimes I see companies from Spain or elsewhere come to the US, perhaps prematurely, maybe before they've gotten perfect product market fit. They look to raise capital at that time. How do you guide them at that inflection point to think through that?
It depends, obviously, on the type of company and the type of sector, right? For example, in marketplaces, companies like Cabify or Global, they have to raise money when they don't need it, because money is a weapon in this sector, and Oscar can elaborate on that even much better than me, because they have a very big position in the mobility space. So they always have to think about funding, with a lot of time in advance, let's say, because it's certainly a weapon for other companies, a SaaS business and companies that are where money or funding is not that relevant. They obviously have to be very, very certain that their product works, and the KPIs and the numbers that they need to show are very good so that they can, have a successful fundraising. Because if you just go around meeting funds in Europe and the US and you tell them I'm going to do this, and then you see them 6 months after and you haven't delivered, that kind of kills it. So depending on the company, we give them different advice, but in general, you have to raise money when you don't need it, basically. So it's something that you have to be very wary about.
Yeah, but if I may, I'd like to add to that it also depends on the growth stage of the company, right? So the venture business is very local in a certain way. You have to be close to the entrepreneur. I almost equate it to film production, where we have like the CEO who's like the film director, the company is sort of the movie, and we're the producers, right? So there's like a natural struggle. There's always some tension in terms of like interest. Of course, we want to maximize our investments. You guys want to grow your business. So when a company is smaller, when it's acting more locally, you need more of a local VC. Once the operations grow more internationally, that's when the international money comes in. As you've seen, or as we've seen with Cabify, with Glovo, and many other ventures, right? So it is both local and global, but depending on size.
And Oscar, you invest in mobility, fintech, areas that are heavily regulated in many places around the world. How do you view regulatory as an area when you're considering an investment? And if you had, and maybe a question for all of you, if you had a perfect world, how would regulatory affect startups?
Sure. I mean, the most advanced economies in the world, I mean, this goes beyond purely making investments, are those that are the most liberalized ones. I mean, of course, you gotta protect consumers, you gotta protect infrastructure, privacy, etc. But above all, you have to ensure that we're not killing in innovation. And any investment firm, not even venture, will tell you how much they hate political risk. And this is something that we've seen, especially right now in Spain, in particular with the mobility sector, or the changes in regulation, which are quite terrible, because you eventually what you're going to see is an outflow of capital, or folks looking at regimes where they know that if there is a certain set of rules, those rules are respected, and not just a nationalistic or populist wind that might suddenly change the rules to please the populace with no obvious reason. And we've actually seen this in the UK with Brexit. So as soon as Brexit was announced, specifically in fintech, you saw the flow of investments from Q2 to Q3 going down by 70%. That's quite draconian.
Yeah, I think it's difficult for an entrepreneur when they're planning the business to think about a regulatory framework and then have the rules change perhaps midway in the course of growing the business. So and Bea, for you, I mean, how do you think of regulatory within the framework of the portfolio companies?
Obviously, I agree with Oscar. I think you can't. It's difficult for investors to understand when you change the rules, in the middle of the game, right? Because as a company, you have your resources, you have a regulation or a regulatory framework, you have a business you have to run, and you make your decisions according to those rules. If they change those rules, in the middle of your game, let's say, obviously it creates uncertainty, and it's very difficult for investors to trust that system. But having said that, it's true that in mobility and in other sectors that are very disrupted by technology, maybe we have to find a new framework. So our demand would be to sit down and find that new framework, which is not happening today. For example, in Spain, right? Decisions are taken based on different reasons, let's say, or different pressures, and we should all sit down and find a new framework. And I'm not talking about mobility. There are other sectors where this is happening too. So I think our demand would be to make us part of the solution and sit down with whomever is making the decisions and try to find a new framework. And apart from that, what we're asking all the time is let us work. All this bureaucracy, all the hurdles that we have to surpass in Spain are a pain, and some of our companies are moving outside because they have all this bureaucracy that they have to deal with. So being part of the solution, sitting down and finding new frameworks, and just let us do our job, basically. Let these companies work and create businesses, turn great companies into great businesses. That's what we all have to do at the end of the day.
Right. And Oscar, for you as a corporate VC, as opposed to a purely financial VC, how do you think about new investments? What are sort of the parameters that you analyze?
Well, I would actually like to qualify that, right? So yeah, effectively we are a corporate VC in as far as well, Rakuten Capital is part of Rakuten, a huge international marketplace. But the only way you make this work is effectively by operating as any other professional independent VC. Otherwise, you don't get there. So there are certain companies that have initiated investment efforts, but if the only thing they're looking for is effectively like synergy with some of the business units, but by the time you get everybody to agree of, oh, this is sort of the investment, sorry, the business rationale why we should make an investment, that investment might trade away, right? So effectively, we have we're a publicly traded company. We have international shareholders. We're chasing a return, and then yes, the synergy, how we connect our companies to our portfolio companies to the rest of our businesses, it's done very much at arm's length. Why? Because I cannot force a business unit to necessarily do business with a company I've invested in, no matter how much I like them. I mean, of course it helps, but it has to be done in a very free, open way. And first and foremost, it's the financial return. But of course, we invest in people, right? So people come first, and then investing in good people with good ideas that makes you a lot of money.
And by the way, Kleiner invested in Spot Home because of Alejandro, obviously. They're very founder-driven. He didn't say that, but it was the main reason, because they told me, so.
Okay.
So that you know.
And because I'm wearing the T-shirt. That's I forgot to say. That's it.
Swag always helps, right? And I hear some corporate VCs say, I will only make an investment if the ultimate goal is to acquire the company. Is that how you guys think about investments?
No, you cannot do that. I mean, well, we're talking earlier on about cap tables, right? And it's always like a constant struggle, especially when there is a popular investment or a round that might be overinvested. I mean, we had this most recently with Glovo. Raised a very nice round a couple of months ago, and it was like this amazing food fight of different funds and corporates. Like everybody wanted to put money, and it's like, oh, we don't need any more money. We're good right now. If as a corporate you invest in a company with a goal of acquiring it, you're gonna fend off other investors. So you're basically gonna kill the cycle or what we stand for. That cannot be done. And actually, we're very democratic. We believe in that balance of powers. When you have an investor that's too big in a certain venture, it's actually bad for the business. And we've seen that playbook happening many times.
Yeah.
And go.
Go ahead.
No, and it's certainly true because we have Rakuten in 3 of our portfolio companies in Glovo, for example, where we actually brought in other industrial players. They set the example, right? So it's not, it's for real because we live it every day in the boards that we have together, and they've always conveyed that message from day one. It's in the contracts because they don't ask for special demands, which is obviously, you as a lawyer know that industrials sometimes have very special clauses. They never do that, and then they behave like any other investor, and they always put the company first. So it's certainly an example for the rest of the industrial players that come into our companies.
Yeah, I wanted to add, because it's both sides. It's not only investors investing in founders, but it's also founders kind of investing too in the, it's a mutual relationship because for us, for example, it's been always, we have been in a position to be quite selective. And for example, I gotta say in my case with Bea, it was in 2016 and we were raising a Series A. And then, Bea conquered me in the first day, I remember that January. And we sat down and you saw it super clear, and it was like a super mutual connection. Then I went out and actually she said, yeah, you got to take it. I was with my bag.
Literally with your backpack.
Yeah, I was on my way to the airport, and something that I always say to the team at the office when we go fundraising, I say, I won't come back to the office without a term sheet. And you know, and she told me, you gotta go. And then when I came back, you know, after meeting different VCs and having interest, I went back to talk with Bea, and then it was like a personal.
And you chose us, which is
Yes,
great.
and it was one of the best decisions we ever taken. Yeah, she's building the best VC. I gotta say. Yeah, but it's mutual. Yeah.
We touched on talent briefly, but I want to dive into that more. Alejandro, for you, how do you think about talent retention? Obviously, in the US, you use stock options.
Yeah.
Here, you don't quite have the same tax framework to make stock options as favorable. But what tools do you use to recruit and retain folks?
Yeah, a part of giving T-shirts to everyone in the company. No, there are several things. Obviously, you gotta have a super exciting project and being always trying to achieve or overachieve, bringing more talent in. Now, for example, that we are recruiting like super top executives. Recently, we presented one of them to the entire company, and then the feedback that we got from everyone, it was like, you know, this guy is amazing, and everyone got super pumped. And then people wanna be surrounded by A players and to learn. And yeah, those A players wanna be with other A players. Now we did a second hiring too, which is a rock star, and she, you know, I'm sure that when we present her, everyone in the company is going to be super excited as well, and then hopefully all those things are going to, you know, create more retention in the, and then that is one thing. Second, you know, I think in rounds like the last one, keeping, you know, the interest of investors coming in, I think that helps to retention in the company. Then, you know, have a very mission-driven organization, strong core values that we have our mission statement, core values everywhere at the office, in our emails and stuff, a constant communication with the team. And also to your, what you mentioned about the stock options, our company is a limited company in UK, so our stock options are under the stock option plans in UK. Although, you know, all the employees are here, so they pay the taxes here, and as you say, there are not like very tax beneficial schemes because there is no really regulation for the stock options, which is pretty advanced in other markets like UK, also Netherlands. I think they're doing an amazing job with that too. So that's one of the reasons also that now we are setting up an office in London, and then we're going to be recruiting more people in London. And actually that helps a lot. When you hire these top executives, all the questions are around the taxation of stock options and yeah, those incentives there. Yeah,
that's great.
If I may, I'd say that, you know, but beyond taxation, what is really true is that prices are rising. So, and by that I mean that there is a dearth of talent, or everybody's kind of like fighting to get the executives, and the premise that people work for free, that's no longer hold. You know, because like, you know, before I think, you know, we had this idea that, oh, you join a startup, you're sort of like starving, there's some like stock options. These companies are taking much longer to go public, or even to get sold. So there is an active secondary market for the shares, which is also encouraging. But also when you start comparing the prices, especially at top level of some of you know, the executives that some of the salaries that the executives are making right now versus what you might make in the corporate world, you know, they are not that distant anymore. And that's because, again, the best startups need the best teams, and you gotta pay the best teams the right prices to keep the show on. So I mean, again, it's back to the movie industry, right? You know, you wanna get like the best actors, you gotta pay them well.
You gotta pay the stars.
Yeah.
And how much time do you guys spend helping portfolio companies source talent, fill the C-suite executives? Bea, maybe you can talk to.
So, for example, in Spotahome, the way I support Alejandro is interviewing the candidates that he chooses and his team choose. So we don't go out actively, you know, to look for specific profiles. We're always thinking about it, obviously. And if we have someone, for example, you hired your mano derecha through Antonio, who works at Seaya. He's a partner at Seaya, and he's the one who gave you the reference of the person that works you know, next to you. But I think what we do is, you know, interview the candidates, and in some cases, as Oscar says, the balance, they have the power at the moment because there are not that many people with a technology background that have grown companies. And it's very difficult to get them hired. So I do a lot of convincing on these interviews. It's the other way around. Actually, I'm doing the convincing. At some point with some candidates, I was even looking for, school for the kids and help for their nannies, or even, very sort of personal things that we could help with, but it depends. So in the Spotahome's case, I think we try to support doing the interview, trying to understand if they're the right candidate, and in some cases, explaining to that candidate what type of company this is, what type of founder Alejandro is, what type of shareholders we are, the long-term vision. So we do a lot of convincing. In other companies, when they hire people that are local in Spain, it's different. We usually have a very big network, and we help with profiles, or hiring the communications person or hiring the public policy person. In Spotahome, it's very particular because they have set up an office in London, and the senior team is coming into London.
I would think that recruiting internationally to Spain for companies that need that would be an attractive sell for many people, right? I mean, Spain's got a wonderful quality of life, cost of living. There's so many advantages to Spain compared to other parts of the world. Do you guys feel that you're seeing that?
I go? Okay, so we took the decision actually to go to London on the recruiting process. It's true, I'm aiming super high, and I wanted to complement what you're saying, like it's super key in all the hirings that we are doing. Like Bea is a key part to bringing them over the line, and the rest of the board members, because all these top executives, they want to talk with every single board member, so it's more like a selling.
They're very demanding.
Yeah, they are, and you pull them out, from the company that they are now, and all those things. So actually, I always tell the team, for me, it's harder to recruit the best people that we get obsessed about than fundraising. And it's a lot of traveling, it's a lot of love. You gotta give a lot of love to these candidates. But anyways, one of the things that happened to us, we were very clear in the candidates that we wanted, and then we wanted to bring them over here, and that was the biggest obstacle that we had to bring them over here to Madrid, which, for me was surprising. But then one of the things that they ask is like, if I go to Madrid, am I gonna be able to recruit the team that I need to succeed quickly?
Right.
And I'm gonna bring, and the answer is not as clear now. Hopefully it will change, but not today. So we took the decision in the middle of the way to go to London because the pool of talent there is bigger.
Keep in Madrid.
Keep in Madrid, yeah. Keep in Madrid. So we have almost 300 people here in Madrid, so that will remain the same. So
I think the problem that we have in Spain, we have amazing talent, and I've never seen any differences. I think, in Spain we have talent that it's even better than in other countries. But we don't have the experience, so you don't have the big tech companies that have built those teams that have been through this, right? So if Alejandro is looking at hiring people, he looks at companies like Booking or Airbnb or Uber. We still are in the process of building these companies. So 5-6 years from now, we'll have those profiles with people that have that experience, and then we can hire locally. The problem now is that we don't have those big tech companies yet. We're in the middle of building them, and that's why we're struggling, right?
Success breeds success, right?
Exactly.
And the more examples of Spotahome and Alien Vault, and we close that circle, the funding circle and exit circle, the easier it becomes, right?
yeah.
So, well, unfortunately, I think we're out of time, but we could continue this conversation for hours. But thank you very much for all of your insights and commentary, and pleasure. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.